We also have joining us today our two candidates for the Western District Secretary Treasurer. We still have a few people trickling in, so maybe I flip it a little bit if Ashley doesn't mind going first as just an update on Western District funding and student initiatives, and then we can go into our candidates to speak. So it gives a few more minutes for people to join. Ashley, you're muted if you're able to start off.
Oh, great. Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley. I'm the NEO Student Funding and Initiatives Committee Chair, and I was appointed this year after Kimberly Leung had served for 7 years, and she's now the Secretary Treasurer of the Western District. And I just wanted to give an overview today of the committee and some announcements. So the Student Funding and Initiatives Committee is hosts student initiatives every year to attract the best and brightest to the transportation engineering profession in the Western District. And these initiatives include the Data Collection Fund, Student Chapter Award, Momentum Award, Cal Competition, Regional Travel Scholarship, Traffic Bowl, and much more. And you can learn more on the website. And these initiatives would not be possible without the Student Endowment Fund. And this was founded in 2004 to provide a self-sustaining funding source for these student initiatives. And it was renamed to the Richard T. Romer Student Endowment Fund in 2013 after he was a traffic engineer for 41 years, and many transportation engineers can trace their careers back to his influence. And he was very influential and very big on serving in professional organizations. And yeah, there's a lot more information on our website too about that. And we reached our 500K goal in 2016. And we introduced the travel scholarship in 2017 to give well, right now we don't have it because it's virtual, but hopefully next year when we're back in person, we'll have the scholarship. And then in 2020, due to the One ITE initiative, we adjusted boundaries with the Western District and the Mountain District. So the Student Endowment Fund was split based on the membership, but we did reach 500K again in 2020. So I think my objective is there's many opportunities for students to be very involved with ITE. And so for announcements, we have the Student Traffic Bowl in June. It'll be held on Zoom. And if you want to participate, you just email me by June 1st with your team name, with your school name and your team names. And then
the alternate.
Yes, an alternate. Yes, with the 3 teammates and 1 alternate. And then the Saturday before the Saturday of the Portland meeting in July, we'll be having the Cal competition and other student events hosted by the Career Guidance Committee. So you just gotta email me by July 1st. And for these, you could just go to the Western ITE website and there's more info on these events. And another key item the committee is working on is rewriting the strategic plan. So there's a Google form that we put together for your input. So you can just scan this QR code and it'll take you to the Google form. And we'd really appreciate your input for current and future initiatives. And if you need the URL, you could also email me too. Yeah, thank you so much for having me SFBAITE ITE to present. And yeah, good luck with presentation, students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley, for that great information there. And I forgot to mention before yours, we do plan on recording today's presentation. I'm actually going to start the recording now.
Oh, Tony, it's already going.
Oh, it was going. Okay, it just didn't show me. Oh, I see it now. So yes, this is being recorded, and we'll put that up on the website as well. So we'll now move on to our Meet the Candidates form. So every year, Western District of ITE holds their election to elect the next Secretary Treasurer for the section. We're joined by the current Secretary Treasurer, Kimberly, who's from the Bay Area section. But today we're here to hear about the two interested candidates, Doug Smith and Justin Link. And they've been going around and meeting with the various sections and using this opportunity. So we'll start with Doug, if you want to give your introduction.
Great, Tony. Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm really honored to be a nominee for Western District for Secretary Treasurer. I'm out of the Southern California section, and I work as a senior program manager for HDR engineering here in Southern California. And it's great to get a chance to talk to the San Francisco Bay Area. One of my fondest memories of IT is really the San Francisco Bay Area meeting in 2010. That was held in San Francisco. My entire family was able to attend, and my wife and father-in-law, who were both in the industry at the time, were able to come with our kids. We were able to attend a Giants Red Sox game on the weekend before the meeting, and then the LA Dodgers game during family night. And we have lots of great memories of that meeting. But what it showed an example of why the San Francisco Bay Area section is so important and so essential to the health of the district. So I think my experience has been, my 30 years of experience has prepared me for this role. And I think if you want to know more about my background and experience, you can look at my LinkedIn page or my Facebook page, check out my brochure, but I'd rather talk about my goals today. I'd rather talk about what I want to do over the next 4 years. So over the last year, it's been a real challenge, and I've been grateful to be able to continue to be productive in our work during work from home. I made it a personal goal to run for office, and when I accepted the nomination to run for Western District, I have 4 things I'd like to accomplish in the next 4 years. I want to improve member engagement, and that includes developing plans and programs that will increase engagement and involvement to the sections within the Western District. I want to continue with innovation. We need to improve and increase the virtual meetings and the webinars and seminars that we offer to our members. We have to become more innovative to provide multimedia meetings and conferences that people will attend in person and virtually. I want to continue with providing technical excellence in our programs. I think it's really important that our members be the best prepared and most capable in the industry, and that our young members are attracted and engaged in the section and in the district in order to gain that technical expertise. And finally, I think it's important to collaborate with all the sections in the district in all 5 states. I think it's important to continue our mentoring and student endowment programs, but mentoring is going to be so important in the next 2 years. We have a lot of young professionals that are really struggling with how their careers are going to develop in the next couple of years, given work from home and the pandemic and the potential economic impacts to our industry. And I think it's important for us to show them the benefits of being ITE members through mentoring and through providing them with more guidance and more assistance in the next 2 years. With that, the electronic ballots will be out in June. I hope everybody will vote. And I hope if you do vote, you'll consider voting for me for Secretary Treasurer. Have a great meeting and have a great week.
Great, thank you, Doug. And next up is
You're welcome.
Justin Link.
Thank you, Tony. I'd like to go ahead and share my screen if I can. Let's see, looks good, perfect. So I have a PowerPoint in order to keep me on track. That way I don't run too long for everybody. Again, thank you very much for your time and the opportunity to speak with you today. Let's see here. So a little bit about me. Professionally, I am the city traffic engineer for the city of Simi Valley. I have almost 20 years of experience in both the private and public sectors, including small firm, medium-sized firm, and large national firm experience. So bring with me quite a few perspectives. Also worked for a medium-sized city, the city I work for today, and large city experience as well. As far as ITE is concerned, I am an ITE fellow and have about 17 years of continuously active volunteer experience with ITE. Since rechartering and serving as the first vice president for the Cal Poly SLO student chapter, I've been section president twice, section administrator for Central Coast since 2018, Western District webmaster for 6 years, hotel chair for the Santa Barbara annual meeting LAC in 2012, and co-chair for the Monterey annual meeting in 2019. And just as a warning for you, Tony, generally speaking, when you end up as the hotel chair, you end up as a co-chair or some other kind of chair. Monterey meeting, incidentally, was one of the most challenging and rewarding experiences I've ever had. And somebody else on the call could certainly attest to that as well. We had 24 sponsors, 49 exhibitors, and 452 attendees, of which 93 were students. And I know many of you, I saw many of you there. Over the years, it has been my absolute privilege to support students who have come up in ITE and have since joined the workforce as full IT members, and I encourage all of you to do so once you graduate. As a volunteer for the District Career Guidance and Student Initiatives, I have helped review resumes, conduct speed interviews, and if you've had the privilege, and that's generous, act in workplace situation skits of which I am generally the bad guy or the heavy. To that end, I am also a sponsor level contributor to the Student Endowment Fund. So if there's one thing I value about ITE, it's the feeling of community. And if there's one good thing about this pandemic, it's that we've all found a way to virtually maintain our community despite not meeting in person. Where sections have been able to quickly pivot to a virtual format, we've seen greater attendance at meetings than ever before, and that is certainly the case with SoCal and Central Coast sections. My overarching goal, therefore, would be to leverage this virtual opportunity to create larger community with deeper ownership through greater participation and transparency. By continuing our virtual reach at annual meetings, having virtual tracks and tours, we can provide a more economical and inclusive way of sharing information and ideas. By supporting sections financially or otherwise to augment in-person meetings with virtual, we can create opportunities to collaborate over large geographic areas and collaborate with other sections. The fourth section, as I've been calling it, mega meeting between Central Coast, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, and Central California, as well as the diversity and inclusion series from the Oregon section are great examples of this. It also helps with sourcing speakers, which is an often difficult task. It certainly comes up at all of the chapter leaders, section and chapter leaders meetings at the annual meeting. Finally, by broadcasting board and business meetings, we can know what's going on the agenda and what's happening around the district behind the scenes in real time. These three initiatives can provide a more inclusive and transparent transportation, of course, but transparent community to students and professionals alike, and give us the opportunity to draw in new members along the way. I really honestly, truly believe that this is the silver bullet for all of us. Lastly, I have been fortunate and very grateful to be recognized by my peers at the district level, and I am humbled by the endorsements that I've received from leaders, mentors, and colleagues. I do truly believe in volunteering and giving back selflessly, but being recognized by your peers for your contributions is always an affirmation of your work to the community. Again, I thank you very much for the opportunity. If you do get bored, please go ahead and check out my website. It's justin4ite.com. And if you have any questions, you can email me, jslink@gmail.com. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you, Justin and Doug. I appreciate that information. It'll definitely help the section have some more insight when they receive those ballots. So with that, I think we're ready to start on our presentations for the day. So like I mentioned before, we have presentations from 4 Bay Area schools, some of them giving multiple presentations. And we're going to go through. Feel free to put some questions in the chat if anything comes up. We'll try to squeeze in some Q&A time, depending on how time is going. We do have a pretty full agenda, though, and want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to present. So please feel free to put any questions in the chat. That way they can be responded in the chat. And if we have some time for discussion at the end, we can do so. So we're going to start off with a presentation from San Jose State about the Palmdale Airport project. Why now may be the time. So if Owen, I saw you were on, if you could feel free to share your screen and get started.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see, the presentation mode. Let's see. There we go. Yeah. Can you all see that?
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
My screen? Okay. My presentation is the Palmdale Airport project. Why now may be the time. And the background, I'm going to be covering the history of the short history of the project and the rising demand at LA airports, the existing airports in LA, and the opportunities provided by new high-speed rail access. And then I'll present my proposal, some calculations of the capacity and demand for existing airports and what the demand might be for a new airport. And then present the proposed timeline for construction and the benefits of the new airport. And then I'll cover the further studies that would be needed before pursuing this project. Okay, then brief history. Los Angeles Department of Airports proposed in 1968 proposed a new airport to serve the greater LA area. And they authorized the Los Angeles World Airports, the owner of Los Angeles International, to purchase lands near Palmdale. And the agency, Los Angeles World Airports, purchased over 17,000 acres near the United States Air Force Plant 42 between 1969 and 1983. And they, as of 2013, they still own this land and they lease it for several different purposes, mostly agricultural and some manufacturing. And the rising demand, the demand at the existing LA area airports has been increasing at about between 2000 and 2019, about a 1.4% annual growth rate, although the growth rate has varied from year to year. And currently, these 5 airports in 3 counties handled nearly 114 million passengers in 2019, and I'm projecting that the demand will be over 150 million passengers per year by 2040. And then the graph to the right shows the projected total demand through 2070. And then the high-speed rail access, that will greatly expand the population base for this airport, because despite the airport being a long way from the Los Angeles area, the high-speed rail will provide access within less than an hour, and as well as providing access from Bakersfield and from the Victorville area. There's California high-speed rail, and then there's a Bright Line high-speed rail line from San Diego, from Las Vegas, and then the High Desert corridor. And I calculated the projected demand, or projected the demand and estimated the capacity based on projects at LA International to expand capacity there, and based on Ontario International having an ultimate capacity of 30 million passengers a year once all terminals are built. And then the other 3 airports have limited capacity, limited room for growth. So I estimated 164 million per year capacity. And then the demand minus capacity gives me the excess demand, which would be the demand that could be served by a new airport. The proposed timeline, I'm proposing for the airport to open in 2040 with and open on a smaller scale with 1 runway and 1 terminal, capacity of 10 million passengers per year. And 2040 is about the time that high-speed rail will be available for access to the airport, and also the existing airports will have reached capacity about that time. And then my proposal is to gradually increase capacity, build more runways and terminals up to the ultimate capacity as demand increases. And the benefits of the new airport are it will provide relief from congestion at existing airports, and it'll be an economic boost for the Lancaster-Palmdale region, creating thousands of jobs. And the airport will have plenty of room to expand because it's thousands of acres on which to build and very few neighbors. And there'll be convenient high-speed rail access to the airport. And the airport could be powered by solar farms located on site, which would provide some or all of the electrical power. And the airport could also be a future hub for airlines, similar to Dallas, Fort Worth, or Atlanta are now. And the further studies that are needed, and unknowns, would be the effect of high-speed rail on passenger demand. High-speed rail would provide rapid access to the airport, so more people would be likely to use the airport because they can get to it more easily. But high-speed rail will also attract people away from flying, but mostly from like the San Francisco, Los Angeles, Las Vegas routes, like the short haul routes will, some of that demand will go to the high-speed rail. But longer routes, there would still be a heavy demand for other routes that aren't competing with high-speed rail. And another further study is the long-term effect of COVID-19 on air travel. No one knows how long it will take for air travel to recover from COVID-19, for the passenger numbers to get back to where they were before. And high-speed rail construction schedules, they could be delayed, projects could be canceled, and they could be delayed. And demand growth could be much higher or lower than predicted. The demand is very variable, and capacity would also depend on the schedule of construction. And also finally, local support or opposition to the new airport. The local residents tend to support the airport, but however, the Air Force at the nearby installation has traditionally opposed the building of a new airport. And in conclusion, Los Angeles World Airports should seriously consider reviving the project and building new Palmdale Airport with the proposed opening date of 2040. And the airport should be constructed in stages, starting with a smaller airport and then expanding it to meet increasing demand. And the new airport will provide many benefits to both the LA metro area and Lancaster and Palmdale. And currently the currently the project hasn't been pursued, but I'm proposing that given the recent trends that they should consider revisiting the proposal, revisiting the project and building the airport. Any questions?
There was a question and comment in the chat from Doug. Doug, if you want to chime in, or
Yeah, I thank you, Tony. Owen, that your presentation is spot on. I had the opportunity to work on a master plan back in the 2000s, a long time ago, a master plan for the Palmdale Airport. And while they concluded many of the same conclusions you have arrived at. And it's something that's worth looking at because there'd be additional sources of information for you. Unfortunately, politics got in the way at the time, and Lawa was not able to move forward with the airport. But I think, I think all the cards are in the right places, and your conclusions are really very very accurate. So,
Thank you. Okay.
and as Smadar points out in the chat, I grew up in Lancaster, so I know the area quite well. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's always seemed like a good opportunity site that they've tried to do regional flights here and there, but has never really, unintended on this pun at first, but I'll use it, it never took off.
Yeah.
Is there another question out there before we move on to the next presenters?
I'm going to look at the chat and see what the questions are.
I think that was
that all the
possibly
questions from the chat?
Well, feel free to put some more questions in. If anything comes up, we can be answering them on the side, and if there's any more time at the end. But thank you very much, Owen. Really appreciate you taking the time to present today. And we'll go next to Cal Berkeley, who's going to be talking about the 2030 Fresno County Transportation Plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen. Give me a second.
All right, let's get started. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erica, and today we'll be presenting the 2030 Fresno County Transportation Plan. And we've been working on this project for the past year remotely. And then this is for the 2021 American Society of Civil Engineers Mid-Pack Conference that's hosted annually every April. And for the Fresno County Transportation Plan, the project was aimed to connect surrounding rural cities in the Fresno region to goods, services primarily for low-income, underserved residents through an improved transportation infrastructure network. Next slide, please. And so when approaching our prompt, we decided to uphold these 5 values, and we wanted to ensure being equitable to make sure transit is accessible and affordable, primarily for low-income households residing in the rural Fresno area. And then we took in data-driven to be best informed of how to make our decisions, following by being user-centric to always ensure that we plan for all users of all abilities and backgrounds, and also being safe, and then finally concluding to ensuring that our plan is sustainable to reach carbon neutrality. Next slide, please. And then this is just a brief overview of what we intend to cover today, starting off with examining Fresno County's transportation system, followed by their system overview, and then our design recommendations to upgrade the infrastructure in the rural area, and then our environmental and societal impact analysis, and then concluding with cost estimation. Next slide, please. And now we'll hand it off to Michael, who will examine the Fresno County.
Thank you. All right, so this I'm going to be examining the current conditions within Fresno, especially for those who aren't from there. So first, we're going to discuss some of the statistics, and we identified this was by the U.S. Census data. This is basically the OD matrix with, in a network form. between our study cities, Fresno, Kingsburg, Wheatley, and Parlier. And these were kind of just the cities that were given as part of the prompt. There were actually a lot of other small rural cities around Fresno, and major intermediate cities, Selma, Dinuba, Clovis. The two transit systems that serve the area, FAX buses in Metro Fresno and FCRTA buses in rural Fresno. And these riders very much correlate with the low-income demographic that this problem was asking us to focus on, because we have statistics like 84% of FCRTA riders don't have any other mode of transportation. And the average ratio, the ratio of FAX riders median income to Fresno's is 1 to 5. So some pretty staggering statistics there. And upon further, sorry, my voice is a little hoarse today. Okay, upon further estimation, we also observed that there were a lot of problems with the system, including the fact that there's a lot of unmet demand. There's public transit mode share of 1.5% or less, despite 10% of households without vehicles, 25% poverty rate. And probably has a lot to do with the fact that there's a very poor rural LOS, because a lot of these buses only come 3 times a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, once in the afternoon. And low-income workers, rural workers, do not commute with that kind of distribution that's peak in the morning, peak in the afternoon. They're kind of like more like a uniform distribution commuting throughout the day. The farm workers all in the morning, the service workers kind of start at all different times of the day. And we also found a lot of operational and network issues with the current system. So most notably, FCRTA operates very highly segmented routes, and it's always almost 50% of its vehicles on standby. They have like one vehicle, each route has like 2 vehicles assigned to it, and 1 bus is used for normal operations and 1 bus is used as a standby. And that's for every single route. The probability that all those routes are going to fail at the same time is actually very, very low. And lastly, in FAX, for those who are familiar with the FAX street network, they serve the cardinal street directions very, very well, but diagonal inter-hub journeys less efficiently. So we were proposing a system for the competition that tried to change all this. We tried to unify the Southeast Transit, Kingsburg to Wheatley College Transit. We tried to turn on the pointer. The Kingsburg to Wheatley College Transit and Wheatley Dinuba Transit service. So this used to be 3 different routes, and we're trying to combine it into one route network. What happens is between Fresno and Selma, there's an express local configuration. So the red route takes State Route 99, while the blue route takes Golden State Boulevard. And there's a couple, there's a lot of industrial areas and agricultural areas that are served on that route. And then after Selma, they operate, the red route operates clockwise, while the blue route operates anti-clockwise. So that actually provides a lot more accessible connectivity between all these cities and the services in all these cities. The overweight, I guess, is Wheatley, because that's kind of where the regional DMV is, the regional community colleges, and a lot of services here. Then the new system, then the time transfer in Selma, which kind of works, SFBAITE section, right? Yeah, it kind of works just like MacArthur and the MacArthur BART station, where, the two northbound buses are kind of timed to transfer at Selma, so then you can ride either the express or the local into Fresno. So this system would have the capacity to increase mode share from 1.5% to about 7%, simply through reallocating and rescheduling the vehicles and operating hourly between 5 in the morning and 9 at night, which corresponds better with the schedule. Then within each rural city, we also proposed the first and last mile transit through expanding dial ride services and bike sharing services. We proposed to upgrade the existing dial ride services, which currently have no infrastructure or very little information provided, to bus stops. We're actually going to have dial ride stations, so to speak, at bus stops, such that they would be nodes, and each node would be no more than 1/4 of a mile away from all the residential areas. So we kind of had one node every 0.25 miles. And then we proposed central dispatch via phone and text line. We had a lot of options to do it by smartphone and all that, but we were very mindful of the demographic that we're trying to serve, and that the internet penetration of low-income families in this area is very, very low. So we kind of stuck with the traditional call and dispatch system that not familiar to many of us urban people now, but anyone else, when I was really young, I remember still using that. And also our bike sharing was provided by the bike library model, which was, we researched a lot of different types of bike sharing models. And we settled on this because it was kind of maintained as a central collection and library. It was first used in some rural communities in Kansas and Ohio. And lastly, we planned all of them to coalesce around a central transit hub for seamless intermodal transfers. It's here, I believe, on this map with the intercity buses that we just discussed on the last slide. And the last prong of our proposal was that we wanted to propose effective fare elimination. The main reason was because only 10.9% of FCRTA's fares and 13% for 7% for FACTS. These were very, very low fare balance recovery ratios. And we thought that with the transportation burden and with the really low income levels of these of all their users, we thought that this was kind of just another burden on their mobility. So we tried to get all these grants, step grants, environmental justice grants, and whatever grants, and try to impose a more local voter approved fees and Measure C to try to make up for that funding that had just taken away because it's so little anyway. So now I'm going to pass it out to Jackson to talk about what our design team did to kind of design some of the areas there.
Thanks, Michael. So yeah, as Michael said, I'm going to give an overview of some of the design elements that we included in our proposed network. And so for this project, as Michael mentioned, we decided to make multimodal transit hubs at all of the major cities. So that includes Reedley, Parlier, Kingsburg, and Fresno. And so on this slide, this shows the transit hub that we implemented in Fresno. This was the largest hub in our network, and it's also where our bus and transit drivers were able to stop and rest. And so we wanted to promote equity in this prompt. So we were looking to make the work conditions better for the bus and transit drivers, since many of them are of low income. So we included amenities like showers and restrooms that were added with transit workers specifically in mind. And we have other features in this transit hub as well, like parcel lockers that are similar to the Amazon pickup lockers, and also electric bus charging stations for our EV bus fleet. And on the next slide, you can see an example of, for rural cities, a transit hub for rural cities. And so this includes features like food trucks that feature local food truck businesses, the bus shelters that we're using our standard bus shelter design that we also drafted up. And also some rural transit hubs also have a cul-de-sac that uses the City of Fresno standard. And you can see that in the middle of the diagram that restricts traffic to only transit vehicles. And so these transit centers were really functioning as intermodal transfer hubs, and also really neatly designed urban spaces for people to wait for their transit ride. And on the next slide, this is showing our standard bike share station and bus shelter details that we created. So the standard bike sharing station was implemented at all of the bike libraries along our network, and the standard bus shelter was implemented at all the bus stops along our network. And they include features like hand sanitizing stations, a fan with mist, and also sun and rain protection. Since Fresno County can get very hot and sunny during the summers, and also drinking fountains. And now I'll hand it back to Erica.
Thanks, Jackson. And then one of our vital part of our prompt that we were tasked with is doing an environmental and social impact analysis. And so one of the first key things that we considered was in looking at construction impacts, and this involved using environmental friendly technology during the construction process, preparing a traffic management plan when we plan to do road closures, and also following emissions reductions, as Michael mentioned before, accommodating up to a 7% public transportation modal use, and then following by increased affordability to provide low intercity fares that are low for low income residents, senior citizens, and people with disabilities. That saves up to 25% of their annual income, and these are measured by Measure C, STEP grants, other federal and state, and also municipal sales tax, developer impact fees. That's how we were able to fund some of this discounts, and also by increasing connectivity is what we also considered for our equity analysis, is by increasing services from 3 times a day to now 13 times a day, and then also providing bicycle facilities in each transit hub, and also expanding service hours to also cover the early mornings and late nights. And then we also wanted to conclude with inclusive outreach, as we do figure that it's important to make sure that community members are aware of bicycle safety education, and they're also aware of the role bicycle can play in their health and just promoting more active transportation in these rural communities. And now I will hand it off to, next slide, please. I will now hand it off to Trevor, who would go on to initial and ongoing cost estimations.
All right, thanks, Erica. So in order to fund our project, we would need to fund capital improvements, which are basically one-time big costs that we need to finance all at once, or it's like kind of one-time purchases. And we also have a lot of ongoing expenditures, which will be kind of the operations and maintenance costs for our project. So for the initial capital improvement expenditure, we will spend $4.1 million. So we'll finance that over 20 years. So that'll come out to be about $206,000 a year. And then for ongoing expenditures, we need to calculate like labor hours needed to run these bus lines. And then also like gas, insurance, and other forms of maintenance. And that comes out to be about $1.8 million for the intercity bus line and $973,000 for the dial ride bus line cars. And so that total comes out to be about $2.8 million. And then when you add that to the financing over 20 years, that annual cost, that we get an annual cost of $3.022 million. And then if we add a 2% contingency, so 10% contingency, we do that. So then we have a bit of overhead in case costs overrun. We get about $3.325 million in total. And next slide. And thank you.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, we placed second place in the mid-pack competition, and we are very happy that we placed second. But yeah, now moving forward, any questions, comments?
I mean, we received a lot of support from the ITE community, so I thank all of you very much for that as well. No questions? Yeah, not many people know very much about that area. It was a little hard to actually get contacts to try to find out more about the area.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the high-speed rail, it's supposed to eventually go through Fresno, right? I was just wondering if that was considered in kind of the transportation needs of the area.
We did have a stop at the,
Nice.
but we did have a stop at the high-speed rail station. I was talking about how it's going to change the transportation needs of the area, which that was kind of not in the scope, although there's something really interesting. That would be something really interesting to study, I would think, because it would replace a lot of, from a low-income public transit perspective, it would replace a lot of the trips currently going to the Amtrak station and the Greyhound station and the airport. But it's located kind of in downtown, not in the center of downtown Fresno, but in that area where the bus was still passing. So that was a pretty good place to put the station, in my opinion.
And I had a quick question. I was curious whether you had a chance to review the prior unmet need or unmet transit needs assessments that are prepared every year in order to receive TDA funding.
Don't think we came across that document, but I will. But that's definitely something to keep in mind for in the future. Unmet transit needs.
Yeah, and I think if I might jump in, I think also during this time we did get a chance to talk directly with the FCART director, and he told us some of the direct unmet needs in terms of the people there. So yeah, I think reading the unmet needs document would have been really helpful, but we were able to get some of the information just by some of the contacts that we did have.
Got it. Thank you.
And also Fresno, I believe county, they did an equity analysis report. So we also use some of their data to inform our decisions.
Great, thank you, everyone. Do we have any more questions for them before we move on? Probably have time for another question. Anyone wants to chime in? Well, not hearing any. Oh, go ahead.
Thanks, Tony. I have a quick question. So did the team kind of consider more long-term approach to address climate issues, whether the type of vehicles that will be used is electrified and so on and so forth?
You don't want to take that? Or I can take it. Yeah, we actually optimized their, for FCRTA, we optimized their existing fleet they had some gasoline vehicles, some CNG vehicles, and some electric vehicles. So we optimized their fleet such that they used most of their electric vehicles, and we didn't purchase any new vehicles for FCRTA. But in fact, we actually proposed doing 4 more new vehicles, and those were supposed to be all electric. So there are a lot of initiatives actually currently there that are already purchasing all electric vehicles, but we did put that in that will be any new vehicles they purchase definitely will all be electric.
Yeah, and based on our understanding, Fresno already has a really large electricity farm. That's something that we learned when we're talking to the director of like the FCRT. So we were hoping to harness the energy that's already coming from Fresno and to continue using that, as Michael said, in some of the new electric vehicles we hope to purchase within this plan.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that presentation, and thank you for taking the time to present that today. If anyone thinks of any questions, feel free to pop it in the chat, and if we have some time at the end, we can open it up. Next, we're going to move on to one of our aspiring chapters, which is Stanford. And Ken with Stanford is going to give us an update on where they are on signing up to the chapter and why they're wanting the chapter.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kendra. I'm super excited to be here. I am a junior at Stanford University, majoring in civil engineering, and along with my friends Brandon and AJ, we are indeed working to establish a new student chapter at Stanford. Brandon, if you're available, could you quickly mute yourself and introduce yourself, and then followed by AJ?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon. I'm a sophomore at Stanford studying civil engineering, and I'm excited to be a part of ITE.
Hi, everyone. I'm AJ. I'm a third-year junior, I guess, studying computer science and urban studies, and interested to talk about the intersection of those two things in the context of ITE.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. Thank you, AJ. So we're still working on figuring out the details on what our chapter will really look like. But I do want to first give a quick shout out to Amy and Hope for meeting with us recently to give us some really incredible ideas and advice. In creating our chapter, our overarching goals that we have in mind are to really bolster student discussion and awareness of transportation planning and engineering and current events, how to relate this to broader discussions of sustainability and climate change, and to really push for additional courses and educational opportunities for our students. And we're hoping to work through the spring and the summer for a full slate of programming that we hope to launch in fall quarter. So with that, I look forward to working and connecting with all of you in the near future, and thank you very much.
Great. Thank you all for joining us, and really happy to have you interested in ITE and taking these steps to form a chapter. And we're here to support however we can. Any comments, questions out there for folks, or are we ready to move on to our next presentation? Oh, next up is our other aspiring chapter, San Francisco State, who will be presenting on investigating elderly pedestrian collisions in San Francisco.
Okay, sorry, I'm just sharing screens really quick. Okay, hello everyone, my name is Ira Roca. I'm a junior at SF State majoring in civil engineering.
Hello everyone, my name is Anna Viviano and I'm also third year majoring in civil engineering at SF State.
And our presentation is on elderly pedestrians in San Francisco. So it's important to keep everyone safe through traffic laws, but there has been a growth in elderly pedestrian collisions ages 65 and over. And although there are thousands of collisions that have occurred, we focused on collisions that happened at intersections only. So from figure 1, we can see an increasing trend line of collisions from 2010 to the first quarter of 2020. And in figure 2, we can see the different severity levels of the accidents that we've collected. This research is meant to help understand where, why, and how elderly pedestrians have been involved in collisions and what we can do to improve their safety in the future. So throughout this research, we've been using ArcGIS and QGIS, they intertwine with each other sometimes, to map out San Francisco and collisions we have. So in figure 3, it shows an example of the collisions mapped out in QGIS. We also use Google Street View to collect more information about the intersections at the point of collisions. So in San Francisco, there are a handful of complex intersections, and one example would be a collision that occurred at 16th Street and Market Street. The red circle on the map indicates where the collision happened, and it occurred when the driver was making a left turn on 16th Street while the pedestrian is crossing Market Street. Due to the skewed angle making it a wider turn, which can be seen in the image below the map, the numerous legs as well and in the intersection and the medians created for the SF Muni, the driver most likely didn't see the pedestrian as they were making their permissive left turn. So on our Google Street View data, we would take account for these variables as well as surrounding areas such as the medians, public transportation systems, bulb outs, and driveways. Another example would be here in Filbert and Powell Street. The collision happened because the driver ran past a stop sign on Filbert. And looking at the map, each leg present on the image has a stop sign, except for the left leg on Filbert Street. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but I'm talking about this leg.
Yeah, we see your mouse as a pointer.
Oh, perfect. So this does not have a stop sign, and it's a stoplight from this intersection. Along with that, the bottom leg of Powell Street is also very short, which you can see in this image, where it only fits a little over one car, and Powell Street is also a one-way road. So in addition to this intersection, it is a school zone, meaning at certain hours, there will be a high volume of pedestrians.
So another complicated intersection would be Columbus Avenue and Stockton Street. So in this intersection, Columbus Avenue is the main road and Stockton Street and Green Street are secondary roads. The accident that occurred was a severe injury since the vehicle did not yield at the crosswalk, making a permissive right turn from Columbus Avenue onto Stockton Street, which resulted in hitting a pedestrian that was crossing. It's similar to what we see in the image here, where the man is he's about to cross the street, but since it does have a green light for him to cross, however, the gray vehicle also made a right turn. It is also permissive for him to do so. So breaking down this intersection, we can already see that it is a six-leg intersection. In addition, it is also a skewed angle with many sharp right turns, which is risky in a high pedestrian traffic area. Since it is near shopping areas, there are multiple bulb outs, and the reason for that may be that bulb outs help shorten the crossing distance and help vehicles reduce their speed when making a right turn. In addition, there is a raised and painted median along Columbus Avenue, so the secondary streets have turning restrictions to prevent vehicle collisions during rush hour. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, 16% of the San Francisco population are elders, but elders actually make up 50% of the pedestrian fatalities each year. Since 2010, vehicle transit entering San Francisco has increased by 27%, which means more traffic in certain areas. One thing we noticed when collecting our data would be that multiple collisions occur at certain intersections, which means that our results can help identify the risky locations. Our data shows the layout for each intersection, and we take most variables into consideration. For example, sidewalks, crosswalks, bike lanes, bulb outs, stop signs, turning restrictions, medians, driveways, and light poles at each intersection. Our data can help plan safer routes in the future for elderly pedestrians or pedestrians with mobility restrictions. The crash type information that we collect from Transbase can help identify the treatment options, such as signs as signal modifications, intersection and design changes, and traffic control device additions. As you can see in the QGIS map that was shown before, most collisions occur in the city, which can be prevented with the correct treatments added to the most risky locations. Lastly, our data can help practitioners consider a wide range of benefits and costs accrued by different intersection designs and safety treatments. As you can see in the second image, there is a woman crossing at an intersection with the truck making a sharp turn onto the road. And this is one of the things that we are trying to prevent with our research and make San Francisco more safer for our elderly pedestrians. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Any questions out there? Anyone feel free to unmute yourself. Don't be shy. I'm sure there's someone who wants to ask the first question. I'll ask a question. In your research, I know you were focusing heavily on the fatality rate. Did you also look at? Oh, sorry. I think someone else unmuted at the same time. Oh. I know you were looking at the fatality rate. I was curious if you also just looked at the rate of collision. If collisions across the board were higher for elderly pedestrians, or that they have worse outcomes. I know in the end it doesn't make a difference to the person and their families, but as far as like looking at overall research, if we're seeing both a higher level of collisions for elderly and worse outcomes. Oh, so based on the research earlier on, we did look into both elderly and young and middle-aged people, but the outcomes do end up being the same. It's just that with respect to elderly people, there are a lot more disadvantages compared to those who are mobile and are younger. So that's why we really focused on elderly pedestrians, because in San Francisco, it's very busy. So it's the chances of more elderly pedestrians increasing of collisions is more likely and more severe compared to those of younger ages. Great, thank you. Was there another question that was starting out there? Let me look at the chat as well. Don't think I'm seeing any other. I'll echo what a lot I'm seeing in the chat of great presentation, and thank you for joining us today. And next we will move on to Simon Tan with San Jose State, who's going to be presenting on addressing traffic congestion in San Francisco.
Thanks, Tony. Okay, I'll share my screen now. Okay, hi everyone. So my name is Simon Tan, and today I'll be walking you through a policy analysis that I conducted recently about how to tackle the potential return of traffic congestion in San Francisco. I'll also be looking at some early data about what post-pandemic travel patterns might look like in the city. So first, let's talk about the problem of congestion more generally. So in 2018, San Francisco was ranked the world's 5th most congested city, which was stunning given its size. The San Francisco County Transportation Authority has been measuring congestion by looking at mean auto speeds on roadways during peak periods, and they found auto speeds to actually have slowed by about 30% over the past decade. Congestion has many economic and public health downsides. It delays trips for both people who drive and those who ride transit. More cars means more traffic accidents and more air pollution too. In addition, it increases the cost of doing business to the point where it constrains economic expansion. While the COVID-19 pandemic and remote work have temporarily reversed this trend, Some transportation experts have predicted that congestion may come back even worse as normal work conditions return, because people will be more accustomed to driving individual vehicles instead of taking public transit. So given the uncertainty about all this, I wanted to tackle the policy question of what should SFMTA do, specifically in 2021, the short term. I selected a set of evaluation criteria for potential policy proposals, utilizing a blend of traditional criteria such as effectiveness and various measures of feasibility, while adding in a few others that are especially significant to certain stakeholders in San Francisco. For example, merchants, who are a very vocal community in the city. From past research and literature, there are already plenty of well-known transportation demand management, or TDM, strategies that can be deployed, just some of which I've included here as potential policy options. First, we have congestion pricing, basically a fee for drivers to enter the downtown core area during peak hours. The fee could be collected via the same fast-track transponder devices that people use to pay bridge tolls. Low-income drivers could have special tags or programmed transponders that offer a percentage discount. Then there's parking pricing. So some of you may know that San Francisco already has parking meters with dynamic pricing, but by increasing these parking rates, people would be encouraged to take alternative forms of transportation. And next we have Hov prioritization, here in the form of transit-only lanes. So here SFMTA could convert more parking or auto lanes to dedicated bus lanes for faster and more reliable service. Bicycling infrastructure refers to installing dedicated bike lanes to encourage active transportation. A package of employer benefits that are known to have impacts on transportation demand. For example, universal transit passes, parking cash out programs, and carpool subsidies. Basically, employers can offer these as fringe benefits to their employees, and they'll get a tax deduction out of it while shifting their workforce to non-congesting modes of transport. And finally, here we have a do-nothing option, which will result in the status quo. I put all these options through an evaluation using what's called the non-dominated alternative method, including some rough estimates on how they would reduce VMT. And here I've highlighted some of the best and worst performers. So as you can see, while congestion pricing clearly has the most potential effectiveness if implemented, with the 15% reduction in VMT, the ranking exercise revealed significant downsides in all other criteria. Employer benefits likewise had promising effectiveness, but suffers too much in feasibility, cost, and complexity to warrant recommending. So these two probably aren't worth considering any further, at least for the short term. Doing nothing is interesting one because it ranks so highly on all the feasibility criteria for obvious reasons. But this begs the question, in the short term, say just in 2021, could doing nothing actually be the best option? We can look closer at the do nothing option with the scenario analysis. When I looked at VMT data for various cities around the world, even in places where the economy has mostly recovered from the pandemic already, I couldn't really find one that had VMT levels return fully to pre-pandemic levels. It might be too early to tell, but my takeaway was that there is a somewhat high probability that congestion levels may actually not end up worse than before. So I created these three potential scenarios. One where traffic levels return 100%, one where they don't come back more than 80%, and one where the predictions of excessive car usage come true and we end up with 120% of previous VMT. I calculated the expected value of VMT reduction given these percentages, noting that the do nothing alternative was still negative. So in fact, as long as one believes that scenario 2 here is at all more likely than scenario 3, the expected value of VMT will always be down. Of course, if we actually take some targeted policy actions, like I mentioned before, the expected value of VMT reduction would be drastically more. So there is still significant benefit to be had here. A reduction of 2 million VMT is very appealing. The question is ultimately, though, is this as necessary and urgent as we first thought, particularly for 2021, given that SFMTA is facing a major budget shortfall due to plummeting transit ridership, where funds for new initiatives are hard to come by anyway. To answer this question, we really must tackle the big question being asked by all TDM practitioners nowadays. Will traffic return to pre-pandemic levels, and when? Well, I looked into a wide variety of data sources on this, and I realized that the answer, like many things in life, is quite nuanced. So some people have reported that traffic is already back to pre-pandemic levels if you look at bridge tolling data or at certain times of the day. So here we see some articles from the San Francisco Chronicle, Mercury News, and the INRIX blog. Others have reached different conclusions, saying that the travel behavior shifts are more permanent or at least longer lasting than the pandemic itself. Here are some clips from California Healthline, Bloomberg, and a different post from the INRIX blog, notably a more recent one with more data. Apple and Google have also been tracking travel patterns using data from their mapping apps on smartphones. So here we see Apple is noticing that driving is recovering faster than either transit or walking, but both remain significantly below baseline levels. Google breaks down visits and length of stay at different destinations, and it seems that they're all still down across the board, except for residential, of course. Diving deeper into INRIX's data, we can see that trips in San Francisco are still well below where they were in February 2020, but it's interesting that the difference is much greater in the downtown area than more broadly throughout the region. This reflects the fact that daily commuting for downtown jobs just really hasn't returned yet. And of course, we must look at data from the SFCTA's congestion tracker, which identifies percent VMT change for specific major roadways in the city. So notice how VMT on most roads are still under baseline, but there are certain roads that have rebounded to pre-pandemic levels or more, notably a lot of east-west roads and roads in neighborhoods with greater rates of car ownership. This really speaks to the need for targeted TDM approaches because there's no real singular answer across the city as to whether traffic has returned or not. I also wanted to zoom out a bit and think about this past year's dip in VMT in historical context. So this is actually not the first time San Francisco has seen a sharp dip in travel demand. The recession in 2008-2009 also significantly impacted VMT, and the effect lasted multiple years. In fact, the dip in VMT across California during those years helped us reach some carbon emissions reduction targets, funny enough. Looking at the current data for 2021, it seems that we may be in for another gradual VMT recovery. The advent of remote work, especially in a region like the Bay Area, where 50% of our jobs are remote eligible, may also be a force prolonging this effect. So given all that context and the low risk of doing nothing, my immediate recommendation would actually be not to jump straight away into any of the TDM policies I covered. Instead, we can continue to monitor traffic congestion levels through 2021 while existing staff begin laying the groundwork for certain targeted policy options. Specifically, they could begin identifying corridors for transit priority and bike lanes based on equity and traffic patterns, and start gauging the community interest as part of existing projects in those areas. In meetings with the Board of Supervisors, SFMTA staff could keep them informed about what they're seeing and begin building up that political support needed for some of these ideas later on. They can also begin negotiating leases for more parking spaces from merchants if they see some with unused parking capacity. If traffic ends up spiking in 2021, certain elements of policy should be implemented faster than others. For example, increasing parking garage pricing would be a good first step since it has a high potential effectiveness. Then transit-only lanes can be implemented on an emergency basis with temporary street modifications with some standardized way of making them permanent long-term. So I believe that this plan is a balanced approach between doing absolutely nothing and potentially overinvesting in TDM initiatives during a year where SFMTA's budget is already in dire straits. So thank you all for listening, and I'd be glad to answer any questions or comments. You can also feel free to contact me. I'm Simon@briskmobility.com, or you can find me on Twitter at SimTanX, where I post a steady stream of transportation and planning related articles.
Great. Thank you, Simon, for that wonderful presentation. Do we have any questions out there? Well, I see a lot of compliments out there, which are well deserved on the presentation. Not hearing anyone chime in with some questions. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat and we can come back to it later. But with that, I will echo those thanks and we can move on to our next presenter, who is also with San Jose State, and we'll be talking about Express Lane Operations Center and Traffic Operations Monitoring. So kind of the other side of congestion. Bao, you're still muted if you're talking.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No problem.
Can everybody see my screen? Oh, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties right now.
We're seeing it now. Yes, and you're on
Okay.
full screen.
Can you see me though, or?
No, you show not on camera.
Okay, how about now?
Now you are. Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. We're from ITE San Jose State Student Chapter, and we're here to present the Express Lanes Operations Center and traffic operating monitoring. So presenting today are VTA Express Lanes technicians, Kamal, Michaela, and me. So express lanes are relatively new to the Bay Area, but the concept of toll lanes have been around ever since the wide expansions of paved roads all around America.
So express lanes are essentially carpool lanes converted into a lane to give solo drivers the opportunity to use carpool for a fee. Next slide, please. Express lanes offer many benefits. For starters, they offer solo drivers an alternative to spending valuable time stuck in traffic. They also offer predictable travel times during traffic hours. For example, many who work in the Bay Area commute an hour or more for work. Express lanes can help these individuals manage their time better and get to work in a timely manner. Not only are they beneficial for work commuters, but they can also be used for everyday activities such as picking up children from daycare without wasting much time in traffic. Additionally, express lanes can help with congestion management in that they reduce traffic congestion and congestion-related accidents. Lastly, express lanes can generate enough revenue to help pay for maintenance and operation of these lanes, so it is not too costly in the end.
The first express lanes to open in Santa Clara County was the State Route 237 Express Lane and is labeled as Phase 1 by VTA. Valley Transportation Authority opened Phase 1 in 2012, operating only during peak hours of traffic, which were 5 to 10 in the morning and 3 to 7 in the evening. Phase 1 also only covered a small stretch of Interstate 880 from Dixon Landing Road to North First Street on Route 237 in San Jose, as you can see on this page. Next slide. Since then, the express lane area has expanded in what is known as Phase 2 as of November 2019. Including the original span from Interstate 880, the new phase covers the entire state route of 237 from the interstate to 101. With the new phase came the addition of new variable toll message signs, or VTMSs, that communicate to express lane users toll rates as seen on this dashboard here. These toll rates vary depending on the user's start and destination point. Next slide, please. With the open of Phase 2 also came an effort to coordinate with other toll agencies in the area. In 2019 and since, all users of express lanes in the Bay Area region are required to affix a small plastic tag in their vehicle in order to be tolled. Other vehicles without a tag are sent a violation notice, as the express lanes has a license plate capture system. Additionally, in October of last year, high occupancy vehicles of 2 people in a vehicle and clean air vehicles also received a 50% discount on tolls to encourage carpooling. Those traveling with 3 or more individuals in their car are not tolled so long as they also have this tag. Hours of operation were also expanded from 5 in the morning to 8 in the afternoon. Next slide, please.
So VTA collects tolls by using toll readers that are attached to overhangers. When a car passes under the toll reader, the reader will detect a fast track in the vehicle, and depending on the setting of the fast track, the vehicle will be tolled or not tolled. To ensure that that our fast track requirement is enforced, we have CHP and making sure that cars with fast tracks, that cars do have fast track in them. And if you look to the image on the left-hand corner, you can see an occupancy beacon. So once a car goes under the toll reader will communicate to the occupancy beacon what the setting of that fast track is. And then here is a demonstration for you guys. So you can see the car is going under, and then you can see the occupancy beacon flashing a number. So 1 means that it's a single occupancy, 2 means it's occupancy of 2 people, and 3 means the occupancy of 3 or more people. And if it doesn't flash, then that means that there's no fast track in the vehicle. And when there's no fast track in the vehicle, the sensors would automatically detect it, and we have cameras that will take a picture of the vehicle and the license plate, and we will send them a violation. And so all this roadside equipment are communicated back to our VTA server rooms, and this is how us express lanes technicians get our data from the field.
So Kamal, Balor, and I are part of Valley Transportation Authority's Express Lane Operation Team. We work in the Traffic Operations Center in San Jose to monitor traffic conditions and report incidents that may occur along the 237 corridor. We also work with other tolling agencies and work with our partner Transcorp in managing and maintaining our tolling infrastructure. Next slide, please. And here is a look into our operations center. We have several workstations to monitor the corridor, access our monitoring dashboards, and multiple screens along the wall with our corridor camera displays to view traffic in real time. Next slide, please.
Okay, so this is the RTM, or real-time monitoring. We use this to monitor traffic flow, log incidents, and this is also where our daily reports are generated. The map shows phase 2 of the project with the VTMSs indicating tolling prices. So the green dashes you see next to the icons give the average speed of each lane, and we use it to make sure the express lane is flowing smoothly. The car icons show the cars that pass through at that specific point, and the toll reader icon represents the location of all the toll readers near each site. The camera icons show where all the cameras are located throughout. Next slide. This is how we view the CCTV footage from the cameras on site. We generally use them to monitor any traffic congestion, maintenance, and traffic incidents that may impact the express lane.
So with the opening of phase 1 and phase 2 already in operations, we have more plans on opening more phases of express lanes throughout the Santa Clara Valley County. And so we have phase 3 under construction right now, and that's going to be open in fall of this year. And we have phase 4 in planning and phase 5 in discussion. And then here is a concept map of what phase 3 might look like in the future. And thank you. Any questions?
Great. Thank you very much for that presentation. Any questions out there? I'm looking at the chat.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Great presentation, ladies. I'm just wondering, so it's led by Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, but these are all tolling on Caltrans roads. So can you talk about your interaction with Caltrans?
Yes, yeah, I can take it now.
Okay.
So with Caltrans, they do a lot of the maintenance of the roads. So they are still in charge of the roads. They maintain them and all that. And we coordinate with them to say when maintenance is going to be taking place. And whenever they have maintenance, they take over and they say, we're going to be maintaining things here. And also we can monitor that through our camera views. So that's things that we also log as technicians. We're monitoring for maintenance, anything that's impacting traffic flows. And so there's some coordination there as well with Caltrans.
Great, thank you. Any other questions out there? Well, folks, don't run off yet. A chance for, were there any burning questions? Anyone come up with any thoughts for earlier presenters? Now is a chance. While people think about that, I'm going to hand over to Kevin. As a thank you for attending the meetings, we like to do a raffle at the end of the meeting. And Kevin will do that now. And if anyone comes up with questions, we can close out with that.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks everyone for being here today, and thank you to our presenters. I think we had some great presentations. I have in this little bowl here the name of everyone who registered for this meeting by noon today, with the exception of our San Francisco Bay Area ITE board members. And then just out of fairness, our two Western District Secretary Treasurer candidates, but everyone else is fair game. So with that, I will pull a name, and remember, you have to be here to win. So if I pull a name that someone's not here, we'll go ahead and draw again. So it looks like I've got Robert Asuncion. Are you on the call today? Going once, twice? Sorry to hear that. By the way, the student names are in here as well. It's not just professionals. Looks like we've got Vanessa C. Vanessa C, are you on the call today?
I'm here.
Yay, and you registered with your San Jose email address. Is that a good email to send a gift card to?
Yeah, that works great. Thanks, Kevin.
Perfect, thank you so much. Congrats to Vanessa, and thanks again to our presenters. Tony, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to thank all of our presenters. This was the first time that we've done a meeting like this in a long time, and I think it was great to see the wide variety of work that our students throughout the Bay Area are working on. Wing did add a note on Lauren's comment. Wing, for those who don't know, works for Caltrans, and that they do have a operations and maintenance agreement in place between VTA and Caltrans when it comes to all of these express lanes. So with that, if there's no final questions, I think we can call it a day for today, and want to thank everyone once again. We'll be sending an announcement soon about our next meeting, and hope people will be able to join us then. And thank you all. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.